So we'll begin. Greetings, I'm Maria Costino. I'm director of Irpin Lyceum of Innovation Technologies. I will be moderating this event. I want to remind you that it's been 2 years now that Ukrainian children have to study during war, during explosions and ruination and fear, and it's changed also the academic process. It's a daily existential and mortal threat, mortal danger. It has a radically negative impact, and now is the time to especially change, develop education, grow education. I would like to pass the floor to Olha Budnyk, who is the advisor to Ombudsperson from Presidential Foundation to support science and sports, and tell us more detailed how partnership with international donors supports development of education in Ukraine. Olga. Hello, colleagues. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you tonight. You know, we indeed have many missiles and air raids, air alerts every day. That's why, sorry, we had to postpone a little bit the start of this event because of the air alert. But one separate story is that our children, our students, our teachers, everybody involved have not stopped for a single day. We remember that was just the onset of the large-scale invasion. Just for a couple of weeks, academic process has stopped completely. After that, it restarted, and that's the way it's been ever since. And yeah, this kind of resilience is the thing that allows us to provide education the way we can, and we're very thankful for the education community, for the people who continue to do that, staying in Ukraine, even in this kind of situation. Of course, it is us being very thankful to donor organizations as well, because the challenges that educational system face now in Ukraine have rarely existed in this kind of format, because part of our territory is more or less safe, relatively safe, although there are high risks. Part of the territory is in the red zone, so to say, part of it in the orange and the relatively green or yellowish green. And there are regions that are close to the front line, close to the border with the Russian Federation, as well as Belarus. And we understand that the conditions for students over there are substantially more difficult. So when we talk about the support that we get from the donor organization, we can outline several key components. And thanks to these components, we have managed to help resume online or an offline academic process, because after the pandemic was over and the world returned back to offline, in Ukraine it coincided with the onset of a large-scale invasion, and we kind of continue to work online but also offline in the shelter, so that we try and refurbish shelters for students to be able to pursue their activities, their lessons, while they're safe in the shelter, and for them to be able to catch up with the academic material, which is also an important part of socialization, because even with digitalization going so well and profoundly taking all the aspects, at the same time, communication, socialization, face-to-face is as important as ever. We need to provide children the opportunity to see face-to-face their friends, to provide them healthy and wholesome reflection, socialization. That's why I started this from infrastructure, because for us, when we talk with different partners, they ask, aren't we too soon initiating rebuilding? Well, of course we cannot wait
for the Russians till the Russians leave our territory. We have to start now. We have to continue now. We as a nation, we continue to survive and develop. And it's important, therefore, that many educational technologies are being tested now. And this is where I segue in the next phase of my presentation regarding different gadgets and technical solutions that allow you to have direct access to education, even in the war situation. And that is what we are thankful for to our different partners who have been helping us and continue to do that. Sometimes it's electronic pads, sometimes it's PCs for teachers, students, but at least we can guarantee them access to education, their constitutional right. So we are talking about different policies, and it's especially there the donor's assistance is important to help us facilitate the work of different ministries. We're not only talking about Ministry of Education and Science, it's about all the ministries. So we need to provide them the staff, the experts who will quickly help them design the necessary legal framework that will allow us to adapt, because we are hopefully still a country with the rule of law, and some of the those recommendations should be reflected in the legislation, in the cabinet of ministers policies, especially when we talk about scaling up certain things on the national level. So this part of the story is always there, and there are project offices supported by donor organizations helping us design the necessary legal framework for central executive branch, sometimes for local self-governance. Other than that, each new policy can be then split into projects or project-related work, and some of these things we can pilot so that we understand how precisely a certain policy can be implemented. Sometimes it's safe educational environment, sometimes it's the new Ukrainian school as a pilot, which then continues to develop. Separately, it's sometimes role models or ideal or great examples of safe educational facilities, so that we can later scale it up for the entire across the board to be able to guarantee these services. So therefore, donor support is highly important. Therefore, we're also aware that donors' representatives are often talking to the ministries, Ministry of Science and Education in particular, and they can hear their priorities. And they voice these priorities, and then they start curating these initiatives. And I'd like to say here, it's very important to have a shared joint coordination. Sometimes people hear about some need, then they go on their own to try and solve it, and they disappear. They don't communicate what they actually did, how many psychologists, let's say, they have taught, instructed. And just as well, when we talk about the Ministry or Institute of Modernization or the Presidential Fund, it's important for us to understand the landscape. Who covers what, and how much, and what's the coverage, so that we understand in the public policy what areas are already covered, what are still to cover. The synchronization is very important, so that we have more coordinated efforts. I know that there's education. We know that there's coordination with the Ministry of Education, but still, sometimes the gaps appear, and it's important for us to be present. Of course, there is certain autonomy. Donor organizations and civil society and other providers they hire can do certain things independent in terms of their view, their priorities. But if we talk about priorities of the nation, then it would be great if we had feedback after they do something, because we see it as partnership. It's very important. We understand that global donors, they work all over the world, and since the Ukraine is now that country that has so many humanitarian needs, which often happens with the countries of global south, so to say, where the governmental capacity is very different. In our case, we still can shape the vision so that we can hear from both sides what we need. In terms of development, you know probably and heard that Vice Prime Minister Fyodorov and the Minister of Education and Science, they have presented the strategy of innovation development. The importance of innovation in education. There's a system, Global MRIA. There's DIA, which is there's also an educational version of DIA, which is MRIA, and it's an educational trajectory for everyone that you can see from childhood and to the kindergarten and into the adulthood. So because lifelong education is a thing that we're promoting very actively, because it's all part of the human capital, and it's our utmost priority now and in post-war recovery. We understand that the big questions, other than providing access to education now to education for young generation, upskilling and reskilling for adults is just as important. We will need many new experts. So educational technologies is not only schools or kindergartens or higher education establishments. It's everything. It's professional, technical education, and so in all of this, we won't be able to work without the support of our partners. But I think it's very important in this regard is that we understand that there are problems, there are challenges, and we can voice them, and it's very important when there is understanding and synergy, and then donors are able to involve the best providers, where it's about tender procedure, for instance. For public procedure, it's easier because it's not always price, and you can actually get a better value for your money. And I don't think Ukraine would have been capable of getting through this without these partnerships. So that's why we hope that partnership will go on, and everything we're talking about will be met with understanding. Thank you. So, right, thank you. You've heard about innovation, how innovations help us improve the quality and content of education. There's no one better to talk about this. There's Deborah Quazzo, who's the managing director of Venture Fund in the Silicon Valley. They invest in educational technologies and workforce development. They're all over. They invest all over the world, in the U.S. and India. Deborah was twice in the 100 best early investors based on insider investor, and she's a co-founder of the collaboration in Silicon Valley and Arizona University, and it's been the most popular conference for educational innovators. We have a couple of questions to you, Deborah. I'm going to ask this question to you.
So globally, dealing with students' individual needs in large classrooms is a challenge. It's always a challenge. How can Ukrainian students
individual learning and mental health needs addressed, considering that many regions in close proximity to a combat area and they are actually not returning to offline education.
Надавати офлайн освіту.
Maybe some explanation is yet. There were parts of it that dropped out. You're on mute.
I think the question was that do you have, you know how difficult it is to deal with individual needs?
Всі ми знаємо, що
Now the question is also how it is when we know that we are in the fourth year and we are still in online education. What do you see, how we can address at scale the questions that concerns the mental
запитання про те, як навички нові в плані,
how do you see other examples
і як ви бачите інші приклади глобальні, з чого можна повчитися?
from that?
Yeah, well, first, just let me say I'm honored to be here. It is
Ну, по-перше, для мене велика честь бути сьогодні з вами. Мені дуже важко уявити, як українці живуть ці 2 роки. Для нас це настільки неможливо навіть уявити, через що вам доводиться проходити. Ну, мені дуже сумно через те, що переживає Україна, і питання ментального здоров'я постають особливій гостроті. Ми отримаємо багато даних про те, як медіа впливає на ментальне. Ну, хоча це не є наша основна сфера інвестицій в освітній сектор, ми вбачаємо можливість в рішення в розвиток і підтримку ментального здоров'я як додаток до додаткова діяльність, як аспект освітньої діяльності. Тому ми піднімаємо питання серед підприємців, серед освітян, як знаходити рішення масштабні для оптимізації і допомоги людям в їхньому психосоматичному, ментальному здоров'ї. І отже, підготовка тренерів, коучів, інструкторів – це один з аспектів, які допоможуть, я гадаю. Ну, наприклад, починаючи з відчуття одинокості і бажання з кимось поговорити, з кимось поділитися, це вже психологічна допомога і розвантаження. Деякі рішення є на основі штучного інтелекту в сегменті К-12 загальноосвітньої школи. Наприклад, математичні уроки математики. Є одне Google рішення, де коли відео вчителя є живе, але штучний інтелект адаптує його так, що кожен учень, кожен студент сприймає його, наче вчитель персонально до нього абонент. І ось в різних навчальний процес в класах, до цього долучають штучний інтелект. Як більше розмаїття вправ, дидактичних.
And happy. I think one of the other issues, at least here, is engagement. I think in lack of interest post the pandemic in engaging in education, I think also is lending itself to sort of mental health pressures. And yeah, you all are dealing with something that none of the rest of us can comprehend in terms of the pressure. But I do sadly believe that the issues of how do we keep our students mentally healthy are quite pervasive across every country.
Thank you.
Я маю ще одне питання. Скажіть, будь ласка,
One more question.
Considering such situation that we have in Ukraine, where we have the difference in security profile in different regions, safer regions, less safer, how this system of innovation can serve to provide inclusive and safe instruction for everybody, not only for students but for teachers as well, because it's also very important.
In terms of the obviously the physical safety is a huge issue. I mean, frankly, we have I'm in Chicago. We have huge physical safety issues in the south side of Chicago, where students are, experience pretty much on a weekly basis, gun drills and gunfire, and, around, it's a different version of war here in the south side of Chicago, sadly. But I think that what I don't, unfortunately, education technology can't solve that, but I think I'm extremely optimistic about what we're seeing with the introduction of generative AI broadly, and particularly in the K-12 segment, and particularly focused on teachers. I think we all know, and that's you can probably multiply that by 10 in Ukraine, that the job of a teacher is the hardest job in the world. We all know that it is. We have come to expect teachers to wear 1,000 hats, and it's gotten more complex with time. It's back to the mental health. They become a mental health counselor. They're not only teaching math, subject areas, but they're having to deal with extraordinary things in students' own lives that just was not part of the job. 20 years ago. So I think that we are extremely optimistic about what's going on with, and I don't know how widely adopted the generative AI tools are yet into the Ukraine education ecosystem. We are seeing millions of American teachers jumping in to adopt many of these tools, because I think what's particularly exciting, the coding movement was interesting, but not everybody has access to coding, and not everyone is interested in having access to coding. The generative AI products simplify all that. You don't have to code to do generative AI. You simply have to learn to become an effective user of prompts, right? And so we're seeing, Coursera has an incredible prompt engineering course. Actually, I'm taking it right now, taught by a Vanderbilt University professor, Jules White, who's terrific, and we know. And I think there are 2 million students in that course today from all over the world, and that is, it is a heck of a lot easier it's also very Socratic. I mean, it's a very Socratic process. It's a very intellectual process, as opposed to coding, right? Which is a more mechanical process. So I think we have great optimism around the transformation that's possible for teachers and for students, but with the application of generative AI, and appreciate all the issues of whether it's plagiarism or whether it's bias or whatever. But I think people are very focused on those problems, and I think working through them as quickly as they can. It's fascinating. I'm on the board of a company called Turnitin, who actually owns a company in Kiev, and they have a whole team today working on the ground in Kiev. As you all probably know, Ukraine has been a real center of education technology companies, and we hope in the rebuild that sector rejuvenates. But anyway, I think generally lots of optimism for what generative AI can do to make a teacher's job better and easier, and we have a special process for special education, special needs students in the U.S. And we're invested in a company that takes a very difficult paper-based compliance process and makes it completely simple. So it takes the teacher 5 minutes to do it for all of their special education students, versus what used to take 5 hours. And so those kinds of things are happening, and so it's not only the teaching. It's not only creating individualized tutors for students, which is happening all over the place, but I think really going at the problems that teachers face every day, and finding ways to make their jobs better and easier, and frankly more uplifting. I think we're particularly excited. We're actually having Natasha or whomever talked about the ASU GSV Summit that we do in San Diego every year. It's about 7,000 people. We celebrated the Ukraine 2 years ago, and we'd be delighted to sort of re-engage on that front. We had a wonderful fundraising effort related to that, and but we're hosting an AI focused event as well simultaneously, and are very excited about having hundreds of AI based education companies, and that many of them are focused on core problems in the system today. And I think that creates some to me some great optimism for the future, because I don't EdTech has not yet delivered on its promise of creating access and quality at scale. And we believe this next leg with the application of generative AI can potentially and should potentially break that open.
Дякуємо вам. Дякуємо за
Thank you. Thank you for being optimistic and giving us hope that our teachers' hands can be freer and they can be not a jack of too many trades to be a quality teacher. And that will be a quality change in education, where we will also learn to mix and match different subjects, not to only fix on one subject in one lesson. Another important aspect is inclusive education. We'll talk about each child granted the right to education, but are they capable all to have the same access? In the world of technology and innovation, we have to ask ourselves, do all these technologies really open and accessible for children who require an inclusive approach? I would like to have Dr. Maureen Dunn will be explaining to us more this idea how innovations can play a role in education, and how children who are especially vulnerable can use these technologies to have a better access to education that they deserve. So, Maureen, you have the floor.
I've been working in the neurodiversity field for over 2 decades, and I've also just completed a book that's coming out in March on this topic. And the work that I do is kind of I explain it as being focused sort of on the gap problem, where there's these periods of vulnerability, especially for neurodivergent children and young adults, where there's particular kinds of support that will really be critical to making that kind of transition. And so one of the ones I do a lot of work that's more focused on teens transitioning to college or apprenticeship or the world of work. And I also have several elected roles in the community college system, but I was going to focus today more on what I'm seeing with young children, especially in times of disruption. And obviously, again, as Deborah said, I have so much empathy for what Ukrainians have been going through. It's really hard to relate. But I think for when I'm thinking about just more broadly about neurodivergent children, neurodivergent children have always been more vulnerable in terms of being at risk for school readiness, and between the worldwide pandemic and other things going on in other certain geographies of the world, it's even more important to find new solutions for especially young children at the preschool age. And some of the work I've been involved in has been, through the Lego Foundation. I helped them launch their Play for All Accelerator, which is mostly funding technology solutions in this space. And that's been, I think it's really critical that there is more innovation happening in this space, because the teachers are so overwhelmed and overburdened. They have so much on their plates, and it's hard to customize to the needs of each individual student. And there are a lot of neurodivergent students in particular that are falling through the cracks. And so I'm seeing just a lot more interest and investment happening, especially with social impact investors and the accelerator fund that the Lego Foundation spearheaded. There was a pretty broad range of companies that have been funded. Some were very early stage startups that are doing really new novel approaches, and then others like Kahoot, who's a publicly traded company in Norway, but they really weren't in the past focused or thinking that much about neurodiversity, or using their grant to sort of go back and then have conversations and try to rethink aspects of their platform to make it more inclusive. And so I would say, for those of you that, I should back up and say, for those of you that don't know what neurodiversity is generally thought of as a strength-based perspective for individuals that have differences in brain function, and generally it's the neurodiversity movement has desired seeing neurodivergent people as being part of the sort of normal variation of human minds, and that includes autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia. Those are just to name a few. And I would say, when I think about the future, a lot of the work I'm doing is trying to think along the lines of like where things are going, and especially helping schools and other organizations adapt to not where things are like even today, but where things are going to be 5 years from now, right? Where there is going to be so much more automation and AI integrated into solutions, and where do then neurodivergent children also, where I think that there's a special place to where we should be appreciating some uncommon skills. We always should be inclusive. That's just incredibly important in its own right. But I think also there's a lot of unique talent that's not fully being appreciated in the workforce and in our schools, or understood really well. A lot of types of skills that aren't really obvious, from verbal communication or social communication. It could be, lateral thinking, nonlinear thinking, systems thinking, some complex visual spatial skills, the type of leaps of intuitive creative insights that a lot of innovators have and entrepreneurs have, that also overlap, I think, with neurodiversity. And so I think it's important for us to spread awareness and educate, especially teachers. The earlier we can start and give support to teachers in how to best support these students whose minds may not sync up quite as naturally with the social group. I'm going through this as well with my own kids. I've got 3 6-year-olds, so I've triplets turning 7 in March, I think that technology could play a really powerful role in not just helping neurodivergent students, but really changing the ecosystem and moving in a direction that's more, universal design, where we're aiming to accommodate the broadest range of cognitive diversity. And so, like, when you think back to like when the ramp was first developed, it was designed for a certain population, but it's benefited everyone. I mean, it's such a large population of people that benefited from that. And I think similarly, we can be thinking about how we design neuro-inclusive spaces in our classrooms, in our workplaces, where it's not even just the neurodivergent kids and teens and job seekers that benefit, where everybody will be more productive and be more likely to thrive.
Дякую вам за ваш досвід, за цікаву думку. А зараз я би хотіла навести трохи цифр. Ми знаємо, що близько 5 мільйонів українських дітей шкільного віку та вчителів
Ukrainian children and teachers suffer from war. About over a million people require urgent educational support. How quickly these new educational technologies can give us, and how quickly we can mix and match different technological solutions, subjects, didactics to bring it quickly. How innovations, not only technical but pedagogical and didactical. So Nataliya Tetruyeva, who is the co-founder of civil society organization Ukrainian Smile, please share your experience, how you managed to do that. Thank you, Marie. Thank you for the question. Indeed, it's an example. It's a pilot project that we do in our project, where we basically prove how these innovative technologies can help us both work with the most vulnerable students, how to help them individually, and in larger scale across the board. So right now our team with the NGO Ukrainian Smile, supported by partners of Microsoft, who are supporting us with equipment and technology eKidz, by a company who have already a made solution. It's very important because developing innovation in education, they require time. And if there's an innovative solution which has been piloted in another country, on this crisis project, we have this opportunity to test run, which later can be scaled up. And that's what we have. We have a project that is supported by International Humanitarian Foundation that is basically covering the whole east of Ukraine. We work with 6 regions, starting from Kharkiv and Kherson. And I think crisis response of this kind of scale was virtually impossible before. And it's not only being able to quickly adapt, it's also being able to work in digitalization that we couldn't work with before. So we have tests of gauging the emotional, psycho-emotional, psychosocial state, and the level of academic success. And using these educational technologies, we can cover this need. So the concept of crisis assistance through digital technologies has a significant potential. And I understand, just as Deborah had said, it hasn't been explored yet. So the potential of technologies is not yet explored sufficiently, and it's not yet it's not in preschool present the way it should be. So what we do in this project, we are based on digital school book eKidz. We provide this complex of relevant media product that is aimed at complex development of communicative competencies of to develop them in emotional intellect. It's very important for the conditions that our teachers and students have to work. And as Deborah said, we work with AI solutions. It's in the future still. We have to keep it in our focus. What are the benefits that the digital solutions can bring, and I can see in Ukraine? First is supporting not only independent work on the training materials, because that's in the past. We have to run individual consultancy during the lesson based on the analysis of the system that it does with the existing knowledge and automated solution. We also know that there are examples of burnouts, teachers, that it's a problem we work with in Ukraine and in the world. So supporting teachers is very important for us. And targeted intervention, that can be used through open functions, modern content. So developing different competences of students. Our teachers know how students are prone to work with the material. They see their steps and growth, their academic growth. They see their socialize, and this socialization is very important because teachers basically have only limited time in the academic process. They can take that time and use it with a different educated person, not just to analyze the gaps or any other analysis. And also I believe it's very important to it's important to be able to adapt educational content. So if we need a significant need in social and psycho-emotional development, we can provide that content, we can use technologies so that for each age category there's an adapted content. And so that the teachers and administration and parents are involved in that, because that's important. We know how apathetic some parents can be sometimes. So getting them involved in the same academic process with the child is one of the most important elements of our current system in administration in school. If the administration are aware, they have a picture what their students are doing, they know what their communities are doing, what they're interested in. When they know that, then the catching up is more transparent, more clear, more understandable for them. So that's why I understand that when we talk about educational technologies, we need to understand what it means being a vulnerable region where we are, where the humanitarian assistance is still very significant. It's very significant in education all over the country because we have a cumulative effect from the COVID pandemic and this war. It's a continuation of the situation where we already were working in. So the remote rural areas as well as areas close to the front line, in order to be able to help there, we need to have technology that would enable us to have these benefits that I mentioned. Therefore, in each category of students, it's very important, as Maureen said, to achieve, to neurodiverse children, students, be there not just like that, but the teachers are prepared to deal with them and work with them. Because the burnout of a teacher happens not only through excessive non-characteristic jobs, or it can be mental state, their psycho-emotional state, or the situation of the parents or the colleagues they work with. And this is where digital course book helps us, as well as the educational technologies helps us to cover these territories that are not easy to access, but still enable to cover many different categories, not only primary school, but neurodiverse children, different other profiles that we want to work. And we do this intervention in a very small time frame. If we look at this project funded by Humanitarian Foundation, we started in August, and then by March we have 526 schools participating in the project. Up to 44,000 students are there. And after this complex advisory consultancy happens, and trainers with teams of educators and psychologists, all these schools have been actively working. And 25% we can show that our methodology of aggregating knowledge, like in our methodology in Ukrainian language skills, we have some result. Of course, we run into challenges of digital competence, and all society have it. It's not only Ukrainian society has them, but every day our team determines how we can deal with those problems and how we can implement this digital technology that we're talking about in a smarter yet simpler enough way that would enable to quickly respond, quickly enable the academic process with this technology. So when it's easy and simple enough, it lays the foundation for subsequent project and subsequent coverage and response to a situation in education. So to sum it up, we have up to 1 million school children that are either learning remotely or they are homeschooled. And in order to help those students, in order to help the teachers, we need to have these new technologies piloted, tested, and they have results. So I thank all of our partners and the partners who work with us and the administration from each region and excellence centers. This is a very important project for us. So what we can achieve in Warsaw, and we're implementing that because rebuilding is going to be very important for us. Thank you. Thank you, Natalia. Thank you for a wonderful project that can be an independent tool, and it can be a motivation for training. So the teachers and students can use this tool, so that we can cover as many students. A very important aspect in education is partnership with the international donors and national partners as well. But how to properly organize it, how this national leader should be, Dmytro Sherembey will tell us, who is the head of Coordinational Council, 100% live. He's also helping us implement the project we've heard about. And I'd like to ask you, how do you create this image of our great national partner, leader, how you can get the trust of international donors, because that's already a problem, and what are the most significant factors? What the team should be, what the procedure should be, and what the approach in the region should be. Thank you. I will start from the most important, that you have to not to create an image to be a leader, but be a leader. These are two different things. There are organizations who attempt to play a role. There are organizations who are leaders. Leadership is always a vacant stool, because you take all the risks, all the struggle, all the motivation, all the difficulties you have to run into, and it's not a simple place. In order to give a result of leadership, I will just characterize our foundation. Our foundation is 22 years old. We implemented more than 170 projects in Ukraine. We have representation in all Ukrainian regions. We work in 12 countries in the world. We have more than 3,500 social workers. We service 300,000 direct services. We feed more than 1 million people in Ukraine, and we implement in Ukraine innovation technologies in healthcare and training the doctors. The health system that you're using now, and more than 30 million Ukrainians use, we facilitated all of the production of the system. We have our own IT projects that are working autonomously, and we are the foundation that is managed digitally. Meaning I, as head of the foundation, I can now initiate in my fund, where there are 16,000 members, any meeting, and in a day, the decision will be there. And it's a tested system. We have no paperwork. So basically, we are ourselves a digital fund. I'm just telling you this as a result of the way we've done, because in the beginning, it was nothing, and I just wanted, before this intervention, to crystallize some kind of most important deliverable. What has led us to these results? It's a high quality, ambitious goals, well thought, well shaped. And these goals have to be equal to motivation invested in there, even if there's just one person backing it. But it's a passionate person. That person will achieve better results than a unmotivated group. A Ukrainian Smile is a very important sense in it. I would expand this ambition other than this project, outside of it. Imagine, in 10 years, children in Ukraine, each of them has a skill of dreaming and implementing or embodying this dream. It's a country of magicians. It's not knowing the calculus and alphabet. It's not that. Education is a much more fundamental thing that evolves quite quickly through digital technologies, and that at some point skills will be the dominant thing that we'll have to instill, and it's a much large scale goal. It goes through art, artificial intelligence, AI, gadgets, but in the end, the product is a child that has skills of dreaming, being ambitious, and doing the job to implement this dream. I think, and be resilient enough not to be disillusioned if they fail and to start again. That's the secret of success. Donors in the world have accumulated the experience working with different organizations. They can quickly understand when a team is loyal and passionate about their mission. That motivated team goes through all the difficulties, where the ambitions feed the realism. We as a foundation, we have a different story. We have all our procedures digitized. We have very stringent fiscal policies. We have many of our internal procedures. We're procuring a lot for Ukraine. We have shipped more than 500 cargoes, air cargoes of technical assistance. So, but coming back to the past, I remember that small team which was dreaming that we will change Ukraine. And most importantly, we went through a lot of hardships and difficulties, and we didn't stop. And we won't stop now, we won't stop tomorrow. Because we have learned to dream and fight for our dreams. That's why. This whole success was based by goals, motivation, loyalty, and honesty. Donors are not financial agents. It's your partner, your friend, your assistant. You have to value that. 22 years still kept our feeling of gratitude. So we value that friendship. Even if we have to decline the project, we'll still be friends with the partners. So I hope you're also doing this for donors, for partners, for your work, to the magical future you're building. I think with this kind of goals, any team will succeed. You know, we have to believe in something good. So this project is this good thing. I also like to say that according to the studies from 2022, European parental control motivation has impacted academic success of students. So Irina Dombrovska, who is co-founder of the Ukrainian Smile organization, so your civil society goes through several conditions. What is unique in your approach? How using technologies can compensate the lack of online training and can provide the best results? Thank you, Maria, for mentioning this. I would like to say that we all agree that training is very important thing in Ukraine specifically. And we would all agree that digital technologies is the only thing that helps us to organize school process for students that are not who can't visit school. So, situation where children are not in school, what is the most critical in it? What prevents the internet? And theoretically, you can study. So in our NGO, we have realized that most importantly it is this connection between the child and the student, which is and you have the internet, you have connection, but this offline presence is something that moves the child forward, because the teacher, the technology that we are using and we designed is unique, that it can provide opportunity to retain this connection between the child and the teacher, even if the child is not at school, if there's an alert, etc. So based on this technology, this connection will remain, and as Dmytro said, all the children who learn in Ukraine will have this protection, that their connection to their teachers will not be disrupted. So that's why our mission is to provide security, hope to all children of Ukraine, for them to feel that their teachers are next to them, they go through them with them through this with digital technologies. And it can work individually. So it's unique in our technology. That's what's unique that can help Ukraine in this dire time. So, of course, stable situation and safety is the most important. We're in different regions. The whole country is at war, but each region is feeling it differently. How these international educational projects are implemented in frontline regions. Professor Schuler will tell us, who's the rector of Mykolaiv post-diploma pedagogical study. So my presentation will be of two parts, and our international partners have left, some of our Ukrainian partners have left, but I still will talk about some of the things that they mentioned, like Olha Budnyk. Three key concepts are important here. Understanding, I want to hope that we as institutions of post-diploma studies will be understood in Ukraine and in the world, what mission we serve. The synergy, I believe that we will get together, we'll unite our efforts in the name of the future of our children. And the third key concept is scaling up. If two first will be implemented, then we'll scale up any innovation in our state. In the post-diploma studies, I've been 45 years there. So the leadership stool that Dmytro mentioned, of course, maintaining leadership positions is very difficult to our institution. There are 25 of us in Ukraine, whereas there are many more universities. So, to maintain this leading position for our institute in Mykolaiv, 2 years ago we were the first to open digital education media culture in Ukraine. We have the regional center of inclusive education, because these structural units, they are aimed at and it's great that the society have been digitizing, but how ready are the teachers to demonstrate digital literacy? So, you've mentioned a lot about artificial intelligence. A month after artificial intelligence and GPT has appeared in Ukraine, we've designed a number of seminars. For Mykolaiv, we're now preparing media lessons in an audience to demonstrate so generating the product for NGO Ukrainian Society, Ukrainian Smile, and I've pursued and accepted it. So the people who return in their communities who were previously occupied, so the resource, the teacher and the child, teachers, teacher and students and students, and of course psychological component. So there are not many Ukrainian educational technologists that have So psychological support for each methodology or technology or tool is super important now. And it's already been implemented in those establishments that decided to work with us. So to wrap up, I want to stress why I called this number 25 institutions. We have 83 years since the active Second World War. The society decided Institute of Excellence of Teachers. Now it's already a Third World War, and unfortunately up until now our legal framework is not normalized yet, and we still don't know what is the status of our institution. So the foundation, civil society organizations who provide a local, very important role, and we're thankful for them for that. They provide opportunity to use the opportunities they have in a particular region. It's about systemic work. You will deliver your mission. We will shake your hands. So what next? And that's where only post-diploma studies will be. I've been talking to different... Там же немає іноземців вже.
Ні, у них трансляція ще йде.
So we need this. So this tool should exist in the Institute of Post-Diploma Studies, and our employees have to go through training courses, so that later, in partnership with the civil society, Ukrainian Smile, would implement it or continue to develop it. Unfortunately, the foundations and civil society organizations, they tell us that with our philosophy, we only work with children and schools. But you will do your work and you will be thanked for that. But you will do it locally. What then? That's the challenge that we have to think about together, joining our efforts, and to help children with their mental health, so that it's not bitterness smile, but a real joyful smiles. So, Student Sherembey, Pro-Rector of Post-Diploma Pedagogical Education, Vladislav. Thank you, Maria. About the specialty of this project in Donetsk, I can tell you that we have a special kind of approach, a managerial decision that we made. That we designed as the Donetsk regions were occupied, and it was about creating remote representative offices for educational management that would deal with issues of education, providing opportunity for children to get education, creating educational locations, hubs, based on humanitarian hubs of a particular community. So it's only logical that it's more of a targeted coverage, providing assistance to both teachers and students based on these kind of hubs. Sometimes communities have no such opportunity, no such representation in the regions, and this is where post-diploma studies have created for more than a year in Kiev this regional educational hub where all of the educators, regardless of the community, can get these educational services that they need. The right for education is created based on this kind of hubs. Other than that, Donetsk region basically has been dealing with this since 2014, and we had this experience of remote schools created for educational services so that the children in temporarily occupied territories could get schooling. And the Donetsk region is a region that has suffered the least losses in terms of outflow of children. And people and children who are now in European countries and other regions of Ukraine, they still continue to go to their schools. They may be half destroyed, but they work. So I want to focus your attention that it's this project that is concentrated on children from rural areas. And of course, in our communities, sometimes schools are shut down, and it's a certain understanding that this is the first category of children that requires additional attention. We're so happy that there's this initiative, there's the digital educational product that can help these children. Thank you so much. Thanks each of you for your participation, for your comments. We will continue working, we will continue developing, and see you in the new year.